Well, a lot of you have been curious about the sermon title. So let me move into that by beginning with a question or two that may lead to some kind of awakening or personal diagnosis. So I invite you, as I ask these questions, to ponder them, answer them quietly to yourself, honestly. Question 1. If someone calls you while you're on the phone, do you ignore that incoming call, or you put the person you're talking to immediately on hold so that you can take it? When you're at a dinner party or social event, or perhaps even here at church talking to someone, do you have one ear listening to them and the other ear scanning the room for your next move? Do you, be honest now, do you answer a question directed to your spouse or partner while they are talking on the phone to someone else and you're in another room? Come on now. When you receive an email or a text, do you instantly have a need to read it? And are you one of those people who is constantly checking your smartphone or your computer as you work for email or what someone else might be posting on Facebook throughout the day? If you answered yes to 4 or more of these questions, you probably suffer from some form of FOMO. For the right donation, I'll tell you what that is, right? FOMO, which is an actual word included in the most recent edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. It stands for the fear of missing out. The fear of missing out, which is the newest psychological social anxiety disorder in this country. And it is fed by our constant 21st century need to be connected. Isn't it amazing? How sick are we? FOMO is what keeps people tethered to their smartphones, their tablets, lassoed to their laptops, inhibiting them from engaging in the real world because they are so panicked at the possibility they might miss out on something in the virtual world. And in its extreme, this fear is exhaustive, competitive, obsessive. It is an emotional condition that can consume people's energy and seriously affect the quality of their lives. Now, those of you who are being smug and saying, I don't do that, I question it, because if you're honest, almost everybody has experienced FOMO when their cell phone went down and they could not find a plug to recharge it. Who has not had that gone down and you panic that you might miss some incoming message, email, or important phone call? It's just true. Ever gone to dinner and watched a family next to you where no one is talking, no one is looking at each other, and they're all staring at their phones and texting or looking at Facebook? You ever done that? You ever noticed that? It is the new phenomenon. That's FOMO. And at its worst, it is making its mark not merely in our personal lives, our individual existence, but on society as a whole. An example being that church attendance is way down. They project that church attendance, because of technological things like this, that church attendance by the year 2050 will be half of what it was in 1990. That's the bad news. The good news is that if you choose to see it this way, attendance at everything is down. People aren't going to anything anymore. Why would you? It all comes to you. You can all see it right there. If I want to be connected with the world, man, I got it right here. I don't need to leave my house. But friends, where we are connected in one respect and in one area means that we are disconnected in another. And while we have become so obsessed with being in the know and connected with the things of this world, the things really that have very little consequence or significance for our existence, who cares what Paris Hilton did? And I really don't need to see that you just got up and had cereal for breakfast. So why the big deal? But we have become so obsessed with things of this world that have really little consequence that we have allowed to slip away out of our grasp concerns about the things of the next world. The things that we need to nurture, feed, and strengthen our souls. The things that are eternal. Am I right? I think so. And what's interesting about this, though, when I was reading the scripture and thinking about it, is we may think or have thunk that in our modernity that we devised this notion of FOMO, of FOMO. But Jesus was already aware of it. Because Jesus, if you look at his message and you read his preaching and watch his mission and programming, his mission, whatever he did, Jesus knew that people are people. That whether you were in the first century or the 21st century, people are still people, and the base thing that we all need is to be connected to other people. That somehow there is in our DNA this desire to feel like we belong, to feel like we're loved, that there's some place we can go, that somebody else really cares that I get up and every day I have cereal. That somebody cares even about the most insignificant aspects of my existence. I mean, that's what all this reveals, is that we really want somebody to care that much for us. Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that all of us have this desire to have a purpose and meaning in life and to belong to something bigger than us that really matters. Which is why, not just in this Sermon on the Mount, but throughout his ministry, he reached out to folks and brought people together that never, ever, ever would have known each other otherwise. They came from all different walks of life. He invited them to tune in, join in, come in, and be in relationship with him. And the gospel said they did this in amazing ways. The gospel said they would fight through crowds so that a woman could touch the hem of his garment. The gospels tell about the disciples tearing off the thatch of a roof so they could lower a friend to be in his presence. The gospels tell us about a little man named Zacchaeus who climbed way up in the tree so that he could just see. The Gospels tell us how people who didn't think he would come, didn't think they were worthy of him coming, invited him into their home. People still need this. We are no different now than then. Because at our base level, all of us desire we are more than superficial beings seeking shallow relations. We are spiritual beings longing for something that doesn't just fill our time, but fills our souls. That which is holy, H-O-L-Y and W-H-O-L-Y, that which is wholly embracing. We seek to be dialed up and tuned in to the divine. But instead of filling it with good and purposeful things, what we've allowed our culture and our society to do to us is we've allowed this space in us, this desire in us to be filled with noise and clutter. And unfortunately, we in the church have sat back and let that take place. We have acquiesced and we've given up our place in society. And we said, well, if those people want what we have to offer, they can come to us. Rather a smug response, don't you think? Well, if they want what we have, they'll come to us. But social media shows us that we don't live in that kind of world anymore. We live in a world where everybody is going to you and reaching out to you. Well, we must go to them as well. We have to go to them, go to people, go to the world, just as social media does, just as Jesus did. A new way of thinking, as old as the Gospels themselves. And this begins, friends, this happens when we who are called to be preachers, teachers, evangelists, power down our personal interruptions and detours and power up our own personal connectedness and commitment to Christ. Not just for self-edification. You miss the gospel if you believe that you come here solely for yourself. You know, Jesus says to his disciples, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will make it into the kingdom. In other words, it's not good enough just to say my name. You've got to own it and act upon it. You see, it's not merely about coming, it's about going. And if Epiphany, the season of Epiphany, is about anything, it's about that call to discipleship, to go out into all the world, to connect, to share, to give to people something that matters, a connection with Christ. I mean, if the world has given up on the church, then maybe it's because we have given up on ourselves. You know, church data, the church council had a gathering, a retreat of sorts the other night, and we were looking at statistics and demographics and trying to formulate what's our next strategy for the future of the church. And so we used the national statistics returned by the most recent government survey and put a pinpoint right here at Pass-A-Grille, and then drew a circle that included Tierra Verde and up to Treasure Island and over to Old Pasadena and that whole area. And you know, one of the questions that came up in there that I found very interesting, why people don't go to church in that demographic? Their response was, there is no good church in this area. Now, I don't know about you, but I take that a little personally. But rather than getting all smug about it, I have to ask, whose fault or responsibility is that? It's ours. It's ours. And so the challenge within the message is, what are we doing to be and to stay and to help others get connected? You see, we want those folks to have FOMO. We just want them to have it for God. We want them to feel like they are missing out, because they are. And we have to ask ourselves in that same equation, what are we doing about it? And if nothing, And so this morning I want to end with a prayer. I want to end with a prayer by Emily Hope Morgan. A prayer that calls us to good FOMO, as we hunger and we thirst for deeper and wider manifestations of the good life that we believe God has given to us. And I love how this prayer begins, because it addresses the divine as spicy God. You know, how many of us are living on a saltless, seasonless diet of peanut butter and white bread, when the spicy, salty, savory possibilities of the divine are endless? You are the salt of the earth. Pray with me. Spicy God. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus proclaimed that we are the salt for the earth. But sometimes it feels like those who follow Jesus have lost their saltiness. Sometimes it feels like we've lost any flavor. Blandness, boring, passionless. Start shaking us up, God. Help us to recapture the flavor we once had and discover new flavors. Just like picky eaters can grow into adventurous eaters, let us grow into adventurous Jesus followers. Followers who are seeking out different flavors in the world and who are constantly adjusting our seasoning each time we taste your love. We are the salt for the earth. But we can also be the pepper, the saffron, the sugar, the curry powder, the soy, the cocoa powder, the basil leaf. Let our lives so become a rich, rich stew that individual flavors can be tasted, but all flavors might work together to make a beautiful, meaningful, filling meal. Amen.